Tonight we're going to wander slowly through the world of bears. Those remarkable creatures who have walked alongside humanity for thousands of years, inspiring both wonder and respect across every culture they've touched. These are animals of incredible strength and surprising gentleness, of ancient wisdom written into muscle and bone. From the frozen reaches of the Arctic to the dense rainforests of Southeast Asia, bears have carved out lives in nearly every corner of our planet, adapting and persisting through ice ages and changing climates, always finding a way forward. This journey will be a long one, filled with quiet discoveries and gentle revelations about these magnificent mammals. We'll explore their bodies, their minds, their relationships with one another and with the landscapes they inhabit. We'll discover how they speak without words, how they survive the impossible, and how they've woven themselves into the stories humans tell. There's no rush here, no need to remember every detail. Just let the information wash over you like a soft tide, carrying you gently toward rest. If you find comfort in these quiet explorations, feel free to subscribe for more calming journeys. But for now, settle in, let your breathing slow, and let us begin our peaceful walk through the world of bears, scattered across the globe. Live 8 distinct species of bears, each one shaped by millions of years of evolution to fit perfectly into its chosen home. There are the polar bears of the Arctic ice, massive and cream-furred, built for a life spent hunting on frozen seas. The giant pandas of China, with their distinctive black and white markings, spend their days consuming bamboo in misty mountain forests. Sun bears inhabit the tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia, the smallest of all bears, with sleek dark coats and golden chest patches. Sloth bears wander the forests of the Indian subcontinent, their shaggy fur and specialized snouts, perfect for extracting termites from their mounds. Spectacled bears live in the cloud forests of South America, the only bear species native to that continent, marked by the pale rings around their eyes that give them their name. Brown bears, including the grizzlies of North America and the Kodiak bears of Alaska, range across the northern hemisphere in varied landscapes. Asian black bears, distinguished by their V-shaped chest patches, climb through the forests from Afghanistan to Japan. And the North American black bears, perhaps the most familiar to many, adapt to life in forests from Canada to Mexico. 8 species, 8 strategies for survival, each one a testament to the remarkable adaptability of the bear family. The size difference between the largest and smallest bears is almost difficult to comprehend. At one end of the spectrum, sun bears reach only about 4 feet in length when fully grown, weighing perhaps 60 pounds, no heavier than a large dog. They move through the dense undergrowth of tropical forests with ease, their compact bodies perfectly suited for climbing and maneuvering through tangled vegetation. At the other extreme stand the polar bears, the largest land carnivores on Earth. Some male polar bears grow to 10 feet in length and can weigh as much as 1,700 pounds. To stand beside one would be to feel utterly dwarfed, to understand viscerally what it means to share the planet with creatures so much larger and more powerful than ourselves. And yet, despite this enormous range in size, all bears share certain fundamental characteristics, certain ways of moving through and interacting with the world that mark them unmistakably as ursids. As members of this ancient family dot in the wild, where danger and hardship are constant companions, bears can live for up to 25 years. That's a quarter of a century spent navigating the changing seasons, learning the patterns of food availability, avoiding threats, and passing on knowledge to the next generation. Every year of life in the wilderness is hard, one earned through intelligence, strength, and more than a little luck. But in captivity, where food arrives regularly and medical care is available, where the threats of starvation and predation are removed, bears can live twice as long. 50 years, half a century, long enough to see the world change dramatically around them, long enough to develop deep relationships with their caregivers, long enough to become individuals with distinct personalities and preferences that those who know them come to recognize and respect. It's a reminder that longevity, for bears as for so many creatures, depends not just on biology but on circumstance, on the particular challenges and comforts of their environment. When winter descends and food becomes scarce, bears enter a state of dormancy that has fascinated humans for centuries. They retreat to their dens, those carefully chosen or excavated spaces that will serve as refuge for the coldest, darkest months of the year, and there they sleep, not the absolute torpor of true hibernation, but something remarkable nonetheless. Their metabolism slows dramatically. Their heart rate drops from 70 or 80 beats per minute down to as few as 8. They take perhaps 1 breath per minute, sometimes even less. What's truly astonishing is that bears can remain in this state for more than 100 days without eating, without drinking, without eliminating waste. Their bodies have evolved an extraordinary ability to recycle their own metabolic waste, breaking down urea that would normally become urine and using it instead to build proteins that maintain their muscles and organs. While they sleep, they're slowly consuming the fat reserves they built up during the abundant months, their bodies carefully rationing energy to carry them through to spring. When finally they emerge, thin but alive, they step out into a world beginning to green with new growth, ready to eat again after months of fasting. In the middle of hibernation, when snow blankets the den and the world outside is locked in winter's grip, mother bears give birth. The cubs emerge tiny and helpless, hairless and blind, weighing less than a pound each. They're completely dependent on their mother's warmth and milk for survival. The mother, still in her dormant state, rouses enough to lick her cubs clean, to position them so they can nurse, to tuck them against her body where her warmth will keep them alive. It seems almost impossible that birth should occur during this time of greatest scarcity and cold, but the timing is actually perfect. By being born in the den, the cubs are protected from the harsh weather and from predators. They spend their first months of life in absolute safety, nursing and growing in the darkness, until spring arrives and they're strong enough to venture into the world. When the family finally emerges from the den, the cubs are furred and mobile, ready to begin learning the 1,000 lessons they'll need to survive on their own, though we often think of bears as fearsome carnivores. Most species are actually omnivores with a strong preference for plant matter. Their diets vary enormously depending on species and habitat. Giant pandas have specialized almost entirely on bamboo, consuming up to 40 kilograms of it each day, their digestive systems struggling to extract nutrition from this tough, fibrous plant. Polar bears, at the other extreme, are true carnivores, hunting seals on the Arctic ice, their survival dependent on the fat-rich meat of marine mammals. American black bears feast on berries when they're in season, their diet shifting throughout the year to take advantage of whatever food is most abundant. They'll eat fruits, nuts, insects, roots, and yes, occasionally meat if the opportunity presents itself. Sloth bears have evolved specifically to eat termites, using their long snouts and powerful suction to extract insects from their mounds with remarkable efficiency. Brown bears, perhaps the most opportunistic feeders of all. Catch salmon during spawning runs, storing up fat for the winter ahead. The rivers churning with silver fish and the bears standing like statues, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When you see a bear rear up on its hind legs, it's an arresting sight. They can stand there, balanced on 2 feet like a person. Bears are most comfortable moving on all fours, their gait efficient and powerful. But they have the ability to walk bipedally for short distances, and they use this ability in various situations. Sometimes they're trying to get a better view, to see over tall grass, or to spot something in the distance. Sometimes they're trying to appear larger and more intimidating to a threat. The resemblance to a human standing upright is uncanny, unsettling even. From a distance, a bear walking on 2 legs has been mistaken for a person more than once. This bipedal ability is possible because of the structure of their skeleton and muscles, which allow for flexibility and balance that most quadrupeds don't possess. It's another reminder of how adaptable and versatile bears are, how they can shift their behavior and posture to meet the demands of different situations. Bears have larger brains relative to their body size than most land mammals. This isn't just about raw brain size, but about what that brain can do. Bears demonstrate remarkable problem-solving abilities. They can remember the location of food sources for up to 10 years, creating mental maps of their territories that guide them to berry patches, salmon streams, and other resources as the seasons turn. They've been observed covering their tracks when being hunted, deliberately walking backward in their own footprints to confuse pursuers. They can camouflage their scent by rolling in strong-smelling substances to hide their own odor. In captivity, bears quickly learn to manipulate complex locks and can figure out multi-step puzzles to access food. This intelligence serves them well in the wild, where survival often depends on adapting to changing conditions, remembering past experiences, and making decisions based on incomplete information. The bear's mind is as much a survival tool as its strength or its claws. Unlike many mammals, bears see the world in color. Their eyes contain cone cells that allow them to perceive the full spectrum of visible light, much as humans do. This ability helps them identify ripe fruits, distinguish between different types of vegetation, and navigate their environment more effectively. At night, their eyes reflect light, producing that characteristic eye shine when a light catches them in darkness. This is due to a layer of tissue called the tapetum lucidum, which reflects light back through the retina, giving the photoreceptor cells a second chance to capture the photons and essentially improving night vision. The combination of color vision and enhanced night vision gives bears significant advantages. They can forage effectively during the day, identifying the most nutritious plants and fruits by their color, and they can continue to navigate and feed in the dim light of dawn and dusk when many of their prey or food sources are most active. Their visual world is rich and detailed, quite different from the limited grayscale perception of many other. The collective noun for a group of bears is a sloth of bears, a term that comes from the Middle English word for slow. It's an ironic name, considering that bears can run at speeds up to 40 miles per hour when they need to. But perhaps the name reflects the fact that bears often seem unhurried in their movements, conserving energy, moving with a kind of deliberate patience through their territory. In reality, bears are mostly solitary animals, and seeing a group of them together is relatively rare outside of certain contexts, like salmon runs, where multiple bears might gather at the same productive fishing spot, or mothers with their cubs. The name sloth may be imprecise, but it has persisted through centuries of usage. a linguistic fossil preserving an old perception of these animals as slow and lumbering. An impression quickly dispelled by anyone who has seen a bear move at full speed. As climate change alters habitats and pushes species into new territories, bears are encountering each other in ways they haven't before. In the Arctic, where sea ice is retreating earlier and forming later each year, polar bears and grizzly bears are coming into contact more frequently, and occasionally they mate, producing hybrid offspring. These animals, sometimes called pizzly bears or growler bears, depending on which species is the mother, show characteristics of both parents. The hybrids can survive in conditions that challenge both parent species, potentially having the polar bear's swimming ability and tolerance for cold, combined with the grizzly's ability to survive on a more varied diet. The existence of these hybrids is both fascinating from a biological standpoint and somewhat troubling as an indicator of how rapidly ecosystems are changing. When species that have been separated for thousands of years begin mixing again, it's a sign that the boundaries and patterns that have existed for millennia are shifting. 2. Constellations in the night sky bear the names of bears. Ursa Major, the Great Bear, contains the asterism known as the Big Dipper. Those 7 bright stars that have guided travelers in the northern hemisphere for countless generations. Nearby is Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, which contains Polaris, the North Star, the one fixed point around which all the other stars seem to rotate as the Earth turns. These constellations have been recognized as bears by many cultures across millennia. Their presence in the night sky connects bears to human navigation, to our sense of direction and place. When ancient sailors crossed unknown seas, they looked up and found their way home by following the bears in the heavens. There's something poetic about this, about bears serving as both terrestrial and celestial guides, anchoring us to the land and to the cosmos simultaneously. Despite their fearsome reputation, bears are generally not aggressive toward humans. Most species will actively avoid human contact if given the chance. When bears do attack, it's usually because they've been startled, or because they're defending their cubs or a food source, or because they've been habituated to humans and have lost their natural wariness. A bear that attacks out of genuine predatory intent is extremely rare. The vast majority of bear encounters end with the bear running away, or the human backing off slowly without incident. Bears don't see humans as prey. We're strange, unpredictable creatures that bears would much rather avoid than confront. But this general non-aggression shouldn't be mistaken for harmlessness. A bear that feels threatened is dangerous, and respecting their space and understanding their behavior is crucial for coexistence. The real danger often comes not from the bears themselves, but from human behaviors that put both species in difficult positions. Bears have excellent memories, and they quickly learn to associate certain places or behaviors with food. If a bear discovers that human campsites contain easy meals, it will return again and again. If it learns that garbage cans are reliable food sources, it will make checking those garbage cans part of its routine. This is why wildlife managers emphasize the importance of never feeding bears, even inadvertently. Don't leave pet food outside. Don't let garbage sit accessible for long periods. Don't leave coolers or food containers where bears can smell them. Once a bear develops a habit of seeking human food, it becomes increasingly bold and problematic, often leading to situations where the bear must be relocated or, tragically, killed. The phrase, "a fed bear is a dead bear," captures this grim reality. Every time we make it easy for a bear to access human food, we're pushing that animal one step closer to a fatal encounter with wildlife management, For those who camp in areas where bears live, proper food storage is essential. Bears can smell food from miles away, their sensitive noses picking up even faint odors carried on the wind. To prevent bears from being attracted to your campsite, use bear-resistant canisters, which are containers specifically designed to keep bears out. These canisters are made of hard materials that bears can't bite through or pry open, and they seal in the smell of food. Cook and wash dishes far from your tent, so that food odors don't linger near where you sleep. Store all scented items, even things like toothpaste and sunscreen, in your bear canister. The goal is to eliminate any reason for a bear to investigate your camp. If a bear does approach, don't run. Back away slowly, speak in a calm voice, and give the bear space to leave. Most bears, finding nothing of interest, will move on. It's about coexistence, about sharing these spaces respectfully, giving bears the space they need to be wild. Bear spray is a powerful deterrent, but it must be used correctly. It should only be deployed directly at an attacking bear, aimed at the eyes and nose. The spray contains capsaicin, the chemical that makes chili peppers hot, in a highly concentrated form. When it hits a bear's sensitive mucous membranes, it causes intense but temporary pain and discomfort, usually causing the bear to retreat. However, bear spray should never be sprayed on the ground, on tents, or on equipment as a repellent. The lingering smell can actually attract bears rather than deter them, as they come to investigate this new, interesting odor in their territory. The spray is also dangerous to humans, so it must be handled carefully and stored properly. In actual encounters, bear spray has proven more effective than firearms in stopping aggressive bears, partly because it's easier to deploy accurately under stress, and partly because it doesn't require precise aim to be effective. The often repeated advice to play dead when encountering a bear is actually only appropriate in very specific circumstances. If you're being attacked by a grizzly bear that's defending her cubs or a food source, playing dead can work. In this scenario, the bear is not trying to eat you, but rather to neutralize a perceived threat. By lying flat on your stomach, protecting your neck with your hands, and remaining still, you signal that you're not a threat. Often, the bear will leave once she feels you're no longer dangerous. However, if a bear is treating you as prey, which is extremely rare but does occasionally happen, playing dead is exactly the wrong response. In a predatory attack, you need to fight back aggressively, using any available weapons like rocks or sticks, aiming for the bear's face and muzzle. The key is being able to read the bear's behavior and intent, which is genuinely difficult in a high-stress situation. This is why prevention is so much better than confrontation, why proper food storage and awareness are so crucial. When hiking in bear country, making noise as you walk is one of the simplest and most effective ways to avoid surprising a bear. Talk loudly, sing, clap your hands periodically. The goal is to give any bears in the area advance warning of your presence, allowing them time to move away before you get close. Bears don't want to encounter humans any more than we want to encounter them, but they need time to detect us and leave. This is especially important when hiking near streams where the sound of rushing water might mask your footsteps, or when walking through dense vegetation where visibility is limited. Some people attach bells to their backpacks, though voices are generally more effective. The noise doesn't have to be constant, just frequent enough to give bears fair warning. It might feel awkward at first, chattering to yourself or your companions as you hike, but it's a small effort that significantly reduces the risk of a startling, potentially dangerous close encounter, despite their willingness to eat human food when it's available. Bears strongly prefer their natural diet. Wild berries, fish, roots, insects, and other traditional foods are what their bodies are designed to process most efficiently. Human food, while often calorie-dense and therefore attractive, doesn't provide the balanced nutrition that bears need, and can cause health problems when it becomes a dietary staple. Studies have shown that when bears have access to abundant natural food sources, they largely ignore human-provided food. It's only when natural food is scarce, or when human food is so readily available that it requires less energy to obtain than wild food, that bears begin to focus on anthropogenic food sources. This suggests that the best way to reduce human-bear conflicts is to ensure that bears have access to healthy, intact habitats with abundant natural food. Rather than relying solely on deterrence and management after problems develop, bears are actually quite communicative animals, using both vocalizations and body language to express their intentions and emotional states. Learning to read these signals can help people understand when a bear is uncomfortable, frightened, or aggressive, as opposed to merely curious. A relaxed bear might sit down, look away, or even lie down. These are signals of non-aggression. A nervous or agitated bear might make huffing sounds, clack its teeth, or make sudden short charges that stop well before reaching you. These are warnings, the bear's way of saying, "You're too close, back off." The bear's ears are also expressive. Forward-facing ears indicate interest or attention, while ears laid back suggest fear or aggression. By learning these signals and responding appropriately, by giving the bear more space and showing that you're not a threat, many potential conflicts can be avoided entirely. The key is respecting these communications, treating them as the valid expressions they are, rather than seeing all bear behavior as uniformly threatening. Bears share certain unmistakable physical characteristics that mark them as members of the Ursid family. They have large, powerful bodies built for both strength and endurance. Their tails are short, almost vestigial, unlike the long tails of many other predators. Their heads are broad, with small, rounded ears set to the sides. Their legs are thick and muscular, capable of carrying their considerable weight over long distances and varied terrain. Their eyes are relatively small compared to their head size, and their sense of smell is far more important to them than vision. The fur of bears is typically long and shaggy, providing insulation against cold, though some tropical species have shorter, sleeker coats. The color of bear fur ranges widely across species and even within species. There are black bears that are actually brown or even blonde, brown bears that can appear almost black, and all the variations in between. Despite this diversity in color and size, there's something fundamentally bear-like about all of them, a quality that makes them instantly recognizable. Despite their name and cuddly appearance, koalas are not bears at all. They're marsupials, more closely related to wombats and kangaroos than to any member of the bear family. Marsupials are mammals that carry their young in pouches during early development, a reproductive strategy quite different from the placental development seen in bears. The name koala bear is a historical misnomer that has persisted in popular usage, but scientifically, koalas belong to a completely different order of mammals. This mistaken identity highlights how common names can be misleading and why scientific classification is so important. True bears belong to the family Ursidae within the order Carnivora, while koalas are members of the family Phascolarctidae within the order They're separated by millions of years of evolutionary history Their superficial similarities, the result of convergent evolution in some cases, or simply coincidental resemblance in others. It's a reminder to look beyond appearances and names to understand the true relationships between species. The earliest bear-like mammal that we know of, sometimes called the dawn bear, lived approximately 10 million years ago. These ancient ursids were smaller than most modern bears, perhaps the size of a medium dog, and they likely had less specialized diets than their descendants. Over millions of years, the bear family diversified, with different lineages adapting to different ecological niches and geographic regions. Some became more carnivorous, like the polar bear and its specialized hunting of seals. Others became more herbivorous, like the giant panda with its bamboo diet. Still, others remained generalist omnivores, able to shift their diet based on seasonal availability. This evolutionary radiation produced the 8 species we have today, plus numerous extinct species that filled ecological roles we can only imagine. Each modern bear carries within its genes the accumulated adaptations of millions of years. Solutions to the challenges of survival tested and refined across countless generations. With the exception of mothers with cubs and occasional aggregations at abundant food sources, bears typically live solitary lives. After spending their first 2 to 3 years with their mother, learning the skills they'll need to survive, young bears disperse to find their own territories. From that point forward, they spend most of their time alone, moving through their range according to the seasons and the availability of food. This solitary lifestyle suits bears well. It reduces competition for resources, as each bear maintains its own territory and forages independently. It also reduces the risk of disease, transmission, and lessens social conflicts. Bears do occasionally encounter each other, particularly during mating season or at concentrated food sources like salmon streams, and they have developed communication systems to handle these interactions. But fundamentally, bears are loners, comfortable in their own company, independent and self-sufficient. From young adulthood onward, the time cubs spend with their mother is crucial for their development. During these months and years together, cubs learn by observing their mother's behavior and practicing the skills they'll need to survive on their own. They watch where she forages and what she eats, learning which plants are nutritious and which to avoid. They see which foods are available in each season and where to find them. They learn how to fish, how to dig for roots, how to overturn rocks to find insects. They learn to recognize danger and how to climb trees to escape threats. If their mother encounters another bear, they observe how she responds, learning the social cues and body language that govern bear interactions. This education is not explicitly taught in the way humans teach their children, but through observation and imitation, cubs absorb an enormous amount of information. By the time they're weaned and dispersed, they carry with them a mental library of skills and knowledge that will guide them throughout their lives. Scientists have discovered fossils of an ancient bear species that dwarfed even the massive polar bears of today. These prehistoric bears could weigh between 2,000 and 3,500 pounds, several times larger than the biggest modern bears. They lived during a period when many mammal species were considerably larger than their present-day relatives. Perhaps due to different climatic conditions, different available food sources, or different competitive pressures. Imagining these enormous bears walking the ancient landscape is both thrilling and humbling. They were among the apex predators of their time, perhaps facing fewer challenges from other species due to their sheer size. But, like so many megafauna, they eventually went extinct, possibly due to climate change, habitat loss, or competition with other species, including early humans. Their fossils remain as testament to the incredible diversity of life that has existed on Earth, and as a reminder that the natural world we see today is just one snapshot in an ongoing story of evolution and change. One notable feature of bears is their relatively small, rounded ears. Compared to their body size, bear ears are quite modest. This is actually an adaptation to help prevent heat loss, especially in species that live in cold climates. Large ears have a high surface area to volume ratio, which means they lose heat quickly. By keeping their ears small and well-fed, bears reduce the amount of body heat lost through these appendages. This is particularly important for species like polar bears and brown bears that must endure extremely cold temperatures. The downside to small ears is that bears don't have exceptionally acute hearing. Their hearing is adequate for detecting potential threats and communicating with other bears at close range, but it's not one of their most developed senses. Instead, bears rely much more heavily on their sense of smell, which is extraordinarily keen, and which we'll explore more fully in just a moment. A bear's sense of smell is perhaps its most remarkable sensory adaptation. Bears have been estimated to have a sense of smell that is up to 2,100 times more sensitive than a human's, the olfactory bulb in their brain. The structure responsible for processing scent information is 5 times larger than a human's. Despite the bear's brain being only about 1/3 the size overall, this tells us how critically important smell is to a bear's survival. They use scent to find food, to locate mates during breeding season, to recognize the boundaries of other bears' territories, and to detect danger. Their long snouts house a complex system of nasal passages and scent receptors, numbering in the tens of millions, each one capable of detecting specific molecules in the air when a bear lifts its nose and tests the wind. It's reading an incredibly detailed map of its environment, identifying food sources, other animals, and threats that might be miles away. The world a bear perceives through scent is far richer and more detailed than anything we can easily imagine. Like many animals, bears have specific names for different sexes and life stages. Adult male bears are called boars, a term that might seem odd given that we typically associate it with pigs, but which has been used for male bears for centuries. Adult females are called sows, again sharing terminology with swine. The young are cubs, a term familiar to most people, and as we mentioned earlier, a group of bears, though rarely seen given their solitary nature, is called a sloth. These terms are part of the rich vocabulary that hunters, naturalists, and bear researchers have developed over centuries of observing and interacting with these animals. Knowing the proper terminology doesn't change the animals themselves, of course, but it does connect us to a long tradition of human fascination with bears, a shared language for discussing these creatures that spans cultures and generations. The term polar bear was coined by an 18th century explorer, perfectly capturing the essence of these bears' Arctic existence. Scientists also refer to them by their Latin name, Ursus maritimus, which means sea bear, acknowledging their strong connection to marine environments. The ancient Greek term thala, meaning bear of the northern sea, similarly emphasizes their maritime nature. These names reflect an important truth about polar bears that distinguishes them from most other bear species. They spend much of their lives on sea ice, hunting seals, and are exceptional swimmers, covering vast distances through icy waters, while other bears might occasionally swim. Polar bears are truly marine mammals in their lifestyle, as much creatures of the Arctic Ocean as they are of the land. This unique adaptation has shaped every aspect of their biology, from their fur to their metabolism to their hunting strategies. Polar bears have developed one of nature's most effective insulation systems. Their fur consists of two distinct layers, each serving a specific purpose. The inner layer is made up of dense, soft, plush hairs that trap warm air close to the bear's skin. This creates an insulating bubble of warmth that helps maintain their body temperature even in the most brutal Arctic conditions. The outer layer consists of longer, coarser guard hairs that repel water and provide additional insulation when a polar bear emerges from the ocean after swimming. These guard hairs shed water quickly, and the bear can shake itself mostly dry in seconds. Together, these two layers of fur are so effective at preventing heat loss that polar bears can actually overheat if they run too hard or too long. Even in Arctic temperatures, the insulation works so well that very little of their body heat escapes, making them nearly invisible to infrared cameras. Though polar bears appear to be white, their fur is actually transparent. Each individual hair shaft is hollow and colorless, with a pigment-free outer sheath surrounding a hollow core. When light enters these hollow hairs, it bounces around inside before exiting, and in the process, the light is scattered in all directions. This scattering of light makes the fur appear white to our eyes. In the same way the snow appears white, even though ice crystals are transparent. This apparent whiteness serves as excellent camouflage against snow and ice, helping polar bears blend into their Arctic environment when stalking seals. Under different lighting conditions, polar bear fur can take on different hues, sometimes appearing yellowish or even slightly blue. And here's another interesting fact related to their appearance. Beneath all that white fur, a polar bear's skin is actually black, helping to absorb what little solar warmth is available in their frigid environment. While their fur provides excellent insulation in air, it becomes much less effective when wet. Water conducts heat away from the body far more efficiently than air does, and even the best fur loses most of its insulating properties when saturated. This is where another adaptation becomes crucial. Polar bears have a thick layer of fat, or blubber, beneath their skin that can measure up to 4.5 inches thick. This fat layer serves multiple purposes. It provides insulation that works even when the bear is swimming in ice-cold water, maintaining core body temperature when fur alone would fail. It provides buoyancy, helping polar bears float and swim with less effort. And it serves as an energy reserve that the bears can draw on during periods when hunting is poor, particularly during the summer months, when sea ice retreats and seal hunting becomes more difficult. This remarkable layer of fat is one reason why polar bears specifically target the blubber of seals, seeking to build and maintain their own fat reserves. Polar bear paws are extraordinarily large, sometimes measuring up to 12 inches across. These massive paws serve multiple functions, all of them crucial to survival in the Arctic. First, they act like snowshoes, distributing the bear's weight over a large area so that it doesn't break through thin ice or sink deep into snow. This allows polar bears to travel across surfaces that would be impassable for animals with smaller feet. Second, these large paws function as powerful paddles when swimming. Polar bears use their front paws to propel themselves through water with a dog paddle motion, while their hind legs trail behind and steer. They are capable swimmers, sometimes covering more than 60 miles in a single swimming session. Third, their paws have sharp, sturdy claws up to 2 inches long that provide traction on slippery ice and help them catch and hold on to their primary prey, seals. The bottom of their paws is covered in small bumps called papillae and tufts of fur that provide additional grip on ice. Every aspect of their paws is finely tuned to their icy environment. Of all bear species, American black bears are probably the most numerous, with an estimated population of around 750,000 individuals scattered across North America. They inhabit forests from the northern reaches of Alaska and Canada, where they endure long, harsh winters, all the way south to Florida and Mexico, where the climate is much warmer and more temperate. This wide distribution reflects the black bear's remarkable adaptability. They've learned to survive in many different types of forests, from the dense coniferous woods of the Pacific Northwest to the deciduous forests of Appalachia, from swamplands to mountain ranges. This adaptability has helped them persist even as human development has altered so much of the landscape. In some areas, black bears have learned to coexist with humans in surprising ways, occasionally venturing into suburban areas in search of food, though most still maintain their preference for wild spaces where human contact is minimal. Despite being called black bears, these animals display a surprising range of fur colors. While many are indeed black, substantial numbers have brown or cinnamon-colored fur. Some populations include bears with blonde or even reddish coats. In the forests of coastal British Columbia, there exists a particularly rare color variant known as the Kermode bear or spirit bear, which has creamy white fur. This white coloration is not albinism, but rather the result of a recessive gene, and spirit bears hold deep cultural significance for the indigenous peoples of the region. The variation in coat color among black bears reflects genetic diversity within the species and possibly local adaptations to different environments. A black coat might absorb more heat, advantageous in northern climates, while lighter colors might reflect more heat in warmer regions. Whatever the evolutionary reasons, this rainbow of bear colors reminds us that nature rarely fits into the neat categories we try to impose on it. Black bears are comfortable in water and are surprisingly capable swimmers. Though they spend most of their time on land, black bears will readily enter water to cool off on hot days, to escape threats, or to reach food sources. They've been observed swimming across rivers and lakes with ease, and some have been documented swimming distances of more than 1.5 miles. There are even reports of black bears swimming more than 9 miles in a single journey, perhaps to reach an island where food was plentiful or to escape an area with too much human activity. When they swim, they use a dog paddle motion, their dense fur and body fat providing some buoyancy. Young cubs are sometimes less confident swimmers and will ride on their mother's back when crossing deep water, holding tight to her fur while she does the work of paddling for both of them as winter approaches. Black bears begin searching for suitable den sites where they'll spend the cold months in dormancy. The variety of den locations black bears use is remarkable. In northern forests, many bears den in hollow trees, particularly in the large cavities found in old-growth trees. They might climb high up into a standing tree and settle into a hollow space well above the ground. In areas with less suitable tree cover, bears dig dens into hillsides or crawl into spaces beneath fallen logs or rock formations. In warmer southern regions where winter is less severe, black bears might simply create a bed in a shallow depression, protected by overhanging vegetation. Some bears, in particularly mild climates, don't den at all, but remain active throughout the year. Before settling in, bears often gather soft materials like leaves, grass, and bark to create a comfortable bedding. The den becomes a refuge, a safe space where the bear can retreat from the world until spring calls it forth again. Black bear cubs grow with remarkable speed during their first year of life. Born in the dead of winter, weighing less than a pound, hairless and helpless, they emerge from the den in spring weighing perhaps 5 pounds. By the time their first birthday arrives, they've grown to around 80 pounds. This rapid growth requires enormous amounts of their mother's milk initially, and later, vast quantities of the foods they learn to forage. After about 18 months with their mother, by which time they might weigh more than 100 pounds, the cubs are usually on their own. Their mother will be ready to mate again, and she'll drive her yearling cubs away, forcing them to establish their own territories. It's a difficult transition, these young bears, suddenly alone for the first time, navigating a world full of challenges without their mother's guidance. But if they've learned their lessons well, they have the skills they need to survive. Adult black bears continue to grow slowly for several more years, with males typically reaching much larger sizes than females, sometimes weighing 400 pounds or more in Alaska, where brown bears gather along salmon streams during spawning runs. Researchers have observed a peculiar but logical behavior. After feeding heavily on rich, fatty salmon, bears will lie down to rest. But with their bellies distended from eating, lying flat on the ground is uncomfortable. So the bears dig what scientists call belly holes, depressions in the ground that accommodate their full stomachs. The bigger the bear's belly, the deeper the hole it digs. It's a simple solution to a temporary problem, but it demonstrates the problem-solving intelligence of bears and their drive for comfort. These belly holes also provide insight into bear behavior and feeding patterns. Scientists can examine the size and frequency of these holes to estimate how much the bears are eating and how successful the fishing has been. Even in their moments of rest, bears leave behind clues about their lives, from late summer through fall. Brown bears enter a phase called hyperphagia, a period of intensive feeding when they consume enormous quantities of food to prepare for winter hibernation. During this time, a brown bear can eat up to 90 pounds of food in a single day. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to 300 hamburgers or hundreds of apples. This incredible intake allows bears to gain as much as 6 pounds of body fat per day. This fat is crucial, as it will be their only fuel source during the months of hibernation when they neither eat nor drink. The drive to eat during this period is overwhelming, and bears may be active 20 hours a day, pausing only for brief rests before resuming their search for food. They become single-mindedly focused on calories, eating almost constantly, their bodies instinctively preparing for the long fast ahead. While brown bears and black bears can be similar in size and sometimes in color, several physical features reliably distinguish them. Brown bears have a prominent shoulder hump, a mass of muscle that powers their front legs when digging for roots or excavating den sites. Black bears lack this hump, their shoulders forming a relatively smooth line. Brown bears also have a distinctive dish-shaped or concave facial profile, with the bridge of the nose forming a gentle depression between forehead and snout. Black bears have straighter, more Roman-nosed profiles. Brown bear claws are notably longer than those of black bears, sometimes reaching for inches in length. These long, relatively straight claws are excellent for digging but make tree climbing difficult for adult brown bears, whereas black bears, with their shorter, more curved claws, remain capable tree climbers throughout their lives. Learning to identify these features can be crucial for people who live or travel in areas where both species occur. The scientific name for brown bears is Ursus, And there's something amusing about this designation. Ursus is the Latin word for bear, while Arctos is derived from the Greek word for bear. So essentially, the scientific name for brown bears translates to bear. This redundancy occurred because early drew from both Latin and Greek traditions when establishing scientific nomenclature, while it might seem redundant or even careless. Such repetitions are not uncommon in scientific naming, and they persist because of rules of taxonomic priority. The name Ursus arctos was established long ago, and changing it would create more confusion than simply accepting the repetition. So brown bears remain bears, carrying in their very name a small quirk of scientific history. Brown bear reproduction involves an interesting delay mechanism. Mating occurs in late spring or early summer, but the fertilized embryo doesn't immediately implant in the mother's uterus and begin developing. Instead, it remains in a state of suspended animation, a process called delayed implantation, until the mother enters her winter den several months later. Only then, once the mother has settled into hibernation, does the embryo implant and begin to develop. After about 8 weeks of actual gestation, the cubs are born in the middle of winter, typically in January or February. They emerge tiny and vulnerable, weighing less than a pound, their eyes closed, their bodies nearly hairless. The mother, in her dormant state, rouses enough to clean them, keep them warm against her body, and allow them to nurse. By the time spring arrives and the family emerges from the den, the cubs have grown considerably and are ready to begin exploring the world under their mother's watchful eye. Nearly every bear species lives in the northern hemisphere, ranging across North America, Europe, and Asia. The spectacled bear stands as the single exception to this pattern. These bears inhabit the Andes Mountains of South America, ranging from Venezuela in the north through Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, extending as far south as Argentina. They occupy cloud forests, high-altitude grasslands, and scrublands at elevations ranging from about 800 feet to more than 14,000 feet above sea level. This makes them not only the only bear species native to South America, but also the last surviving member of a lineage of short-faced bears that once ranged across both American continents. Their presence in South America is a reminder of the complex biogeographic history of the Americas, of connections and separations between North and South that have shaped the distribution of species over millions of years. The spectacled bear gets its name from the distinctive markings on its face. Each bear has light-colored fur around its eyes, creating patterns that can resemble eyeglasses or spectacles. These facial markings vary considerably from individual to individual. Some bears have bold, complete rings around both eyes that strongly suggest spectacles. Others have partial markings, just a few patches of light fur around the eyes and on the muzzle and chest. The markings are unique to each bear, as distinctive as a fingerprint, and researchers use photographs of these facial patterns to identify individual bears in the wild, tracking their movements and behavior over time. The rest of the bear's coat is typically black or dark brown, making the light facial markings stand out prominently. It's these distinctive faces that make spectacled bears easily recognizable and give them their memorable name. Spectacled bears are among the most elusive and least studied of all bear species, largely because of their extreme shyness. They prefer remote, isolated cloud forests where human presence is minimal. When humans do enter their territory, spectacled bears typically retreat to higher elevations, sometimes climbing to 14,000 feet or more to avoid contact. They're also excellent tree climbers and spend considerable time in the forest canopy, further removing themselves from potential encounters. This behavior has made studying them in the wild extremely challenging. Much of what we know about spectacled bears comes from indirect evidence, like tracks, claw marks on trees, and feeding sites, rather than from direct observation. Camera traps have provided valuable insights, capturing images of these shy creatures going about their lives, but extended observations are rare. Their reclusiveness is likely an adaptation that has helped them survive in areas where humans have long been present. Spectacled bears are primarily nocturnal, conducting most of their foraging and traveling under the cover of darkness. As dusk falls, they emerge from their daytime resting spots and begin searching for food. Their diet is largely vegetarian, perhaps more so than any bear except the giant panda. They feed on fruits, berries, cacti, honey, and various plants, traveling considerable distances through the forest to find productive feeding areas. One of their more interesting behaviors involves climbing fruit trees and waiting, sometimes for days, for the fruit to ripen. They'll create platforms or nests in the branches using broken limbs, essentially building temporary tree houses where they can rest while waiting for their meal to become ready. Only about 5% of their diet consists of meat, including birds, insects, and occasionally small rodents. This largely vegetarian lifestyle, combined with their nocturnal habits and solitary nature, makes them generally non-threatening to humans, though, like all bears, they should be treated with respect and caution. The most famous spectacled bear in popular culture is undoubtedly Paddington Bear, the beloved character created by British children's author Michael Bond. The first Paddington book was published in 1958, introducing readers to a polite, marmalade-loving bear from darkest Peru who travels to London and is adopted by the Brown family. The character was specifically identified as a spectacled bear, perhaps because Bond wanted to feature a bear species that was both real and distinctively South American. Over the decades, Paddington has appeared in numerous books, television shows, and more recently, highly successful feature films. The character has become an icon of British popular culture and has introduced countless children around the world to the existence of spectacled bears. It's perhaps fitting that a species known for its gentleness and shyness should be represented by one of literature's most polite and endearing characters. Though the real bears would never wear blue coats or eat marmalade sandwiches, Paddington has helped keep spectacled bears in the public consciousness and has indirectly contributed to conservation awareness. Sloth bears have evolved a remarkable adaptation for their specialized diet. Unlike other bears, they can voluntarily close their nostrils, sealing them completely shut. This ability is crucial when they're raiding termite mounds and ant nests, which is how they obtain much of their food. When a sloth bear tears into a termite mound, clouds of dust and debris are stirred up. By closing their nostrils, they can prevent inhaling this particulate matter. Once their nostrils are closed, they use their long, flexible lips to form a tube, creating a powerful suction. They place this tube against the opening of an insect nest and vacuum up termites and ants by the thousands. The sound of a sloth bear feeding this way is distinctive, a loud slurping and sucking that can be heard from considerable distances. It's an unusual feeding method among bears, highly specialized and remarkably effective for extracting tiny insects from hard-to-reach places, while most bear species allow their cubs to follow behind, or roam nearby once the cubs are mobile. Sloth bears have a different approach to cub transport. Mother sloth bears regularly carry their young cubs on their backs, especially during the first several months of the cubs' lives. The cubs cling to their mother's shaggy fur, riding securely as she moves through the forest. This behavior is thought to be a defense against the many predators that threaten young sloth bear cubs, including tigers, leopards, and even other bears. By keeping her cubs on her back, a mother sloth bear keeps them close and protected, reducing the risk that they'll be picked off by a predator while she's focused on foraging. As the cubs grow larger and heavier, they gradually spend more time walking on their own. But the image of small cubs peering out from their mother's back is one of the most endearing sights in the bear world. The teeth of sloth bears have evolved to match their diet. They have a notable gap between their front incisors, creating a clear channel that's perfect for sucking up insects. When they're vacuuming termites from a mound, the insects flow through this gap directly into the mouth, making the feeding process more efficient. Their premolars and molars are relatively small, suitable for grinding up soft-bodied insects and the fruits that make up another significant portion of their diet. However, their canine teeth are large and formidable, as long and sharp as those of any bear. These canines are primarily for defense rather than for feeding. Sloth bears can be quite aggressive when threatened, particularly females protecting their cubs, and their canines are dangerous weapons. The combination of specialized insectivore teeth and powerful defensive canines makes the sloth bear's dental arrangement unique among bears, perfectly adapted to both their dietary needs and their defensive requirements. Sloth bears live in some of the warmest regions inhabited by any bear species, including the tropical forests and grasslands of India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan. Despite this warm climate, they have long, shaggy fur, which might seem counterintuitive. However, this coat serves important purposes. It provides protection from the countless insects that inhabit their environment, including the biting insects that might be drawn to the bears themselves and the aggressive ants and termites that could sting or bite. While the bears are feeding, the shaggy fur also provides cubs with plenty of grip when riding on their mother's back. Additionally, in some parts of their range, particularly at higher elevations, nights can be quite cool, and the fur provides needed warmth. The coat's texture is rather coarse, lacking the soft underfur layer that bears in colder climates possess, which allows for better heat dissipation in the tropical heat. So while the coat appears heavy, it's actually well suited to the sloth bear's lifestyle and environment. Sloth bears demonstrate remarkable maternal care when it comes to feeding their growing cubs. While the cubs are still nursing, they receive their mother's milk. But as they begin to transition towards solid food, the mother provides them with a unique substance that researchers have called bear's bread. The mother consumes and partially digests a mixture of foods including honeycomb, wood apples, and jackfruit. She then regurgitates this mixture for her cubs to eat. The partially digested food has been broken down by her digestive system, making it easier for the cubs to process. When regurgitated, the mixture hardens somewhat, taking on a bread-like consistency with a circular shape and a distinctive dark yellow color. This practice helps bridge the gap between nursing and independent foraging, providing cubs with nutrition they can digest while their systems are still developing. It's another example of the many ways bear mothers invest enormous energy and care into ensuring their cubs' survival despite being largely solitary animals. Giant pandas are remarkably vocal when they do encounter other pandas. They possess one of the most diverse vocal repertoires of any bear species, using sounds to communicate information about identity, intent and emotional state. Pandas can bark, which sounds much like a dog's bark and is often used as an alarm call or greeting. They chirp, producing high-pitched sounds during friendly interactions or courtship. They chomp, making loud smacking sounds with their jaws when agitated or as a warning. They bleat, rather like a sheep, especially when cubs are calling for their mothers. And they honk, a loud, nasal sound that can signal distress or aggression. Researchers have identified at least 11 distinct vocalizations, each with specific meanings. These sounds allow pandas to communicate effectively during their rare encounters, reducing the likelihood of conflicts and facilitating successful breeding. In the forests of central China, these various panda voices create a complex acoustic landscape, a conversation among creatures who spend most of their time alone. Giant pandas face a unique biological challenge. They evolved from carnivorous ancestors and still possess the digestive system of a carnivore, complete with a simple stomach and short intestines designed to process meat. However, pandas have shifted almost entirely to a herbivorous diet, feeding almost exclusively on bamboo. The problem is that their carnivore digestive system is poorly equipped to break down the tough cellulose that makes up most of bamboo's structure. In Chinese culture, giant pandas have been revered for thousands of years. Ancient Chinese art, including pottery, tapestries, and paintings dating back more than 3,000 years, includes depictions of giant pandas. In traditional Chinese medicine and mythology, pandas were considered powerful symbols. They were thought to possess magical properties, and their black and white coloration was associated with the balance of yin and yang. Emperors kept pandas in their gardens as living treasures. The panda's apparent gentleness and striking appearance made it an object of fascination and respect. In modern times, the giant panda has become China's national animal and one of the most recognizable conservation symbols in the world. This long history of cultural significance has helped protect pandas, as efforts to preserve them resonate deeply with Chinese identity and heritage. The panda serves as a flagship species, its conservation success helping to protect the bamboo forests that countless other species also depend on. Pandas have a unique approach to scent, marking that's quite different from other bears. The scent glands that pandas use for marking are located beneath their short tails, near their anal region, to leave their scent as high as possible on trees and rocks, which makes the marks more noticeable to other pandas passing through the area. Male pandas often perform handstands. They'll back up to a tree, lift their hind legs into the air, and walk up the trunk on their front paws, essentially doing a vertical handstand against the tree. Once positioned, they'll rub their rear end against the bark as high up as they can reach, leaving their scent mark. The higher the mark, the more impressive it is to other pandas, potentially signaling a larger, more dominant animal. This acrobatic scent-marking behavior has delighted observers and photographers, adding another endearing quirk to an already charming species. Giant pandas have what appears to be 6 digits on each front paw, including what looks like an opposable thumb. However, this thumb is not actually a finger at all, but rather an enlarged wrist bone called the radial sesamoid. Over millions of years, as pandas evolved to depend increasingly on bamboo, this wrist bone grew larger and developed a pad of tissue, creating a structure that functions much like a thumb. This pseudo-thumb allows pandas to grasp bamboo stems with remarkable dexterity, holding the bamboo steady with one paw while using their teeth to strip away the tough outer layers to reach the more nutritious inner core. The arrangement of the pseudo-thumb opposite the other 5 digits creates a highly functional gripping tool, evolved specifically for manipulating bamboo. It's one of evolution's more creative solutions, demonstrating how natural selection can repurpose existing structures in novel ways when there's sufficient selective pressure. All bears love honey, but sun bears have earned the nickname honey bear for their particular passion for this sweet food. Sun bears have extremely long tongues, which can extend up to 25 centimeters, roughly 10 inches. This extraordinary tongue length allows them to reach deep into beehives, extracting honey and larvae from spaces that would be inaccessible to animals with shorter tongues. The tongue is also quite dexterous, able to manipulate and scoop food with precision. When a sun bear finds a beehive, it will tear open the hive with its powerful claws. Relatively undeterred by bee stings, thanks to its thick skin and dense fur, and then use that remarkable tongue to feast on the honey, larvae, and even adult bees inside. This preference for honey gives sun bears their name, though they also consume a wide variety of other foods, including fruits, insects, small vertebrates, and plant matter. Sun bears have the smallest range of any bear species. Confined to the tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia, they're found in countries including Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and southern China. They inhabit dense lowland forests where the climate is consistently hot and humid throughout the year, quite different from the temperate and cold regions most other bear species occupy. These tropical rainforests provide the sun bear with abundant food year-round, eliminating the need for hibernation. Unlike their northern cousins who must bulk up and sleep through months of winter scarcity, sun bears remain active throughout the year, foraging continuously in an environment where something is always fruiting or flowering. This tropical specialization makes them vulnerable to deforestation, as they're highly dependent on intact forest ecosystems and have nowhere else to go when their habitat is cleared. Sun bears have short, sleek fur compared to other bear species, an adaptation to their hot, humid environment. Long, thick fur would lead to overheating in the tropical rainforest, so sun bears have evolved a coat that's just dense enough to provide protection from insects, and thorns but thin enough to allow heat to dissipate. The fur is typically black, though some individuals have brown or reddish tints. The smooth texture of their coat has another practical advantage. In a rainforest environment where moisture is constant, smooth fur allows water to run off quickly. Similarly, the mud and debris that the bears inevitably pick up while moving through the dense undergrowth doesn't cling to their coat but slides off easily. It's a low-maintenance coat for a challenging environment. Functional without being flashy, perfectly suited to the sun bear's lifestyle in the hot, wet forests of Southeast Asia. Sun bears spend a remarkable amount of time high in trees. They're excellent climbers, ascending to the forest canopy to feed on fruits, honey, and other resources that are abundant in the upper reaches of the rainforest. What's particularly interesting is that sun bears construct platforms or nests in the trees, temporary structures made from broken branches and foliage. These platforms serve as resting places where the bears can sleep or simply lounge during the day, elevated above the forest floor where it's often somewhat cooler and where there's some relief from ground-dwelling insects. The platforms are typically built in the forks of large branches and can be quite elaborate, with multiple layers of broken branches creating a relatively secure and comfortable bed. Different individual sun bears have different platform building styles, some making more elaborate structures than others. These platforms are abandoned after use and eventually fall apart, but while they last, they're remarkably effective treehouse beds. The sun bear gets its name from the distinctive marking on its chest, a patch of light-colored fur that stands out against its dark coat. The shape and size of this patch varies between individuals, but it often resembles a semicircle or U-shape, and local legends in Southeast Asia have long described this marking as representing the rising sun. In some cultures, the sun bear was considered sacred, a creature carrying the symbol of the sun on its body. The scientific name for sun bears, Helarctos malianus, reflects this association. Helatos comes from the Greek words helios, meaning sun, and arctos, meaning bear, literally sun bear. Malianis refers to the Malay Peninsula, part of their native range. So the sun bear's name, both common and scientific, connects it to the sun and to the tropical forests of Southeast Asia, where that sun burns brightly year-round. It's a name that captures both the bear's appearance and its place in the cultural and natural. Asian black bears are easily identified by the distinctive V-shaped or crescent-shaped patch of white or cream-colored fur on their chest. This marking, combined with their otherwise entirely black or dark brown coat, has earned them the nickname moon bear in many cultures. The white crescent resembling the moon hanging in a dark night sky. The contrast between the dark fur and the bright chest patch is striking, making these bears immediately recognizable. In addition to the chest patch, Asian black bears have relatively large ears that stick out from the sides of their head in a bell-like shape, quite different from the smaller, rounder ears of most other bear species. They also have a lighter-colored, often tan or brown muzzle that contrasts with their dark face. These physical characteristics combined make the Asian black bear one of the more distinctive-looking members of the bear family, each feature serving as an identifier that helps researchers and wildlife observers distinguish them from other species. Asian black bears have exceptionally strong upper bodies and are among the most capable tree climbers of all bear species. They spend considerable time in trees, both for feeding and for safety. What's particularly remarkable is that even if an Asian black bear sustains an injury to its hind legs, it can often continue to climb using just its powerful front limbs and claws to pull itself up. There are documented cases of Asian black bears with broken or disabled hind legs still managing to climb trees to escape threats or to reach food. This upper body strength is the result of millions of years of evolution in forested environments where climbing ability provided significant survival advantages. Trees offer access to fruits, nuts, and insects that might be unavailable on the ground. They provide safety from ground-dwelling predators, and they offer resting places where the bears can sleep suspended in the branches, away from disturbance. The Asian black bear's climbing prowess is one of its defining characteristics. While all bears can walk on two legs for short distances, Asian black bears are particularly adept at bipedal locomotion. They can maintain an upright, two-legged walk for more than a quarter mile, much longer than most other bear species can manage. This ability might be related to their need to navigate through dense forest understory, where walking upright occasionally provides advantages in visibility or in pushing through tangled vegetation. Asian black bears also stand upright frequently when assessing their when reaching for food in trees, or when displaying aggressive or defensive behavior toward threats. This comfort with bipedal posture has made them popular in the entertainment industry. Historically, though such use of bears is increasingly recognized as unethical. In the wild, their ability to stand and walk upright is just another tool in their behavioral toolkit. One more adaptation that helps them survive in the complex environments of Asia's forests. Asian black bears have an extensive range across Asia, though their population is fragmented and declining in many areas. They're found in the forested foothills of the Himalayas, ranging through countries including Afghanistan, Pakistan, northern India, Nepal, and Bhutan. They inhabit forests throughout China, where they occur in many of the same regions as giant pandas. Though in different habitat types, they're found on the Korean peninsula, in Taiwan, throughout mainland Southeast Asia, and in Japan, where they occupy forests on several of the country's main islands. They even extend into the Russian Far East, where their range overlaps with brown bears. This wide distribution reflects the Asian black bear's adaptability to different forest types and climates, from subtropical forests to temperate, deciduous and mixed forests, to high elevation forests approaching the tree line. Despite this wide range, habitat loss and hunting have reduced their numbers significantly, and they're now absent from much of their historical range. One of the scientific names for the Asian black bear is Selenarctos. Selenarctos comes from the Greek words selene, meaning moon, and arctos, meaning bear, referencing the distinctive moon-like chest patch that characterizes the species. Thibetonus refers to Tibet, part of the bear's range, so the name translates roughly to moon bear of Tibet. However, there's been some taxonomic debate about the Asian black bear's classification, and it's also been referred to as Ursus thibetanus, placing it more definitively within the Ursus genus alongside brown bears and American black bears. These naming debates reflect ongoing efforts to understand the evolutionary relationships among bear species and to classify them in ways that accurately represent their genetic heritage. For those who encounter these bears or study them, the moon on their chest remains the most memorable feature, regardless of what scientific name is ultimately settled upon in Norwegian folklore. The tale of the white bear King Valeman tells of a prince cursed by a witch to take the form of a white bear. Valeman roamed the Norwegian forests in his cursed state until he encountered a princess. Despite his fearsome appearance, the princess saw beyond his exterior, and through her compassion and courage, she helped him break the witch's curse. Valeman returned to his human form, defeated the witch who had cursed him, and married the princess. The story is one of transformation and redemption, common themes in fairy tales, but the choice of a white bear as the cursed form is significant. White bears, whether polar bears or rare color variants of other species, have long been seen as magical or sacred across many cultures. Their unusual coloration sets them apart from common brown or black bears, lending them an otherworldly quality that makes them perfect creatures for folklore and legend. The tale of Valeman connects bears to human stories of love, transformation, and the power of seeing beyond appearances. Jean de Lors, or John of the Bear, is a character from French folklore. According to the legend, Jean was half human, half bear, having been conceived when a woman was carried off by a bear and lived with him in his cave. When Jean was born, he possessed incredible strength, inherited from his ursine father, but was also covered in hair, which led to him being bullied and treated as an outsider by other humans. The tales of Jean de Lors are adventure stories where this powerful, hairy hero saves princesses, defeats monsters, and performs impossible feats of strength. But he's also betrayed by companions, jealous of his power, and must overcome treachery to reclaim his rightful place. Eventually, he marries a princess and gains acceptance despite his wild appearance. The stories explore themes of otherness, the tension between civilization and wildness, and the idea that inner worth matters more than outward appearance. The bear-human hybrid represents the possibility of bridging two worlds, carrying strength from nature into human society in Spanish-speaking cultures. Particularly in Spain and Latin America, the tale of Juan del Oso parallels the French John Delors. Juan del Oso, or John of the Bear, was said to be the son of a woman and a bear, giving him extraordinary strength. He was so strong that as a child he could perform feats that grown men couldn't accomplish. The legends credit him with moving entire mountains, which altered the courses of rivers and changed the landscape itself. These tales speak to humanity's long fascination with bears as symbols of raw power and strength. By imagining a being who was part human and part bear, storytellers created a character who could accomplish impossible tasks, who possessed power beyond normal human limits. Juan del Oso appears in countless regional variations throughout the Spanish-speaking world, each version adapting the core story to local geography and culture, but all preserving the essential idea that bears represent a kind of primal strength that humans admire and, in stories, sometimes claim as their own. In Native American folklore, particularly among certain tribes, there's a tale of a boy named Muin, whose jealous stepfather tried to abandon him in the forest to die. But instead of perishing, the boy was discovered and rescued by forest animals. A mother bear took him in, raising him alongside her own cubs, teaching him the ways of the forest and protecting him from danger. When the Sheba eventually died, the boy mourned her deeply and took her name, calling himself Mu, which means bear in some indigenous languages. He declared himself to be her child, honoring the bear who had shown him more love and care than his human stepfather had. Meanwhile, the stepfather who had tried to harm the boy met a fitting end as a consequence of his cruelty. This story emphasizes themes of found family, the power of love over blood relations, and the idea that animals can possess the kindness and compassion that humans sometimes lack. Bears, in particular, are portrayed as nurturing and protective, capable of mothering even a human child. One of the most famous bear stories in Western culture is Goldilocks and the Three Bears, a cautionary tale that has been told to children for generations. In the story, a young girl named Goldilocks wanders into the forest and discovers an empty house belonging to a family of 3 bears. She enters without permission, samples their porridge, sits in their chairs, and lies on their beds, eventually falling asleep. When the bear family returns home, they discover the chaos Goldilocks has created. She's eaten baby bear's porridge, broken his chair, and is asleep in his bed. The bear's discovery wakes her, and she flees in fright. The tale serves as a gentle lesson about respecting others' property, about the consequences of curiosity without consideration, and about appropriate behavior. The bears in this story are remarkably civilized, living in a house, eating porridge from bowls, sleeping in beds. They're essentially humans in bear form, which makes the story work as a teaching tool for children, while simultaneously playing on the long human tradition of anthropomorphizing bears, of seeing them as creatures not entirely unlike ourselves. In Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, published in 1894, one of the most beloved characters is Baloo, a sloth bear who becomes a teacher and mentor to Mowgli, the human boy raised by wolves. Baloo teaches Mowgli the laws of the jungle, the survival skills he needs, and the wisdom required to navigate the complex society of the jungle's animals. He's portrayed as patient good-natured and deeply caring, though also capable of sternness when necessary. The relationship between Baloo and Mowgli captures the archetypal mentor-student bond, with the bear serving as a guide who helps the boy understand his place in the world. Kipling's choice of a sloth bear for this role is interesting, as sloth bears are native to India where the story is set, and they possess both the strength and the intelligence that the character requires. The Jungle Book has inspired countless adaptations, including animated films, live-action movies, comics, and stage productions, and Baloo has become one of literature's most recognizable bear characters, a symbol of wisdom tempered with kindness and humor, in stark contrast to the wholesome bear characters of children's literature. The 2012 comedy film Ted presents a very different kind of bear. In this movie, a young boy's Christmas wish brings his teddy bear to life, and the two become best friends. However, as the boy grows into adulthood, his relationship with Ted becomes problematic. The bear, voiced by Seth MacFarlane, who also directed the film, is crude, juvenile, and holds his human friend back from mature relationships and responsibilities. The film, starring Mark Wahlberg and Mila Kunis, is decidedly adult in its humor and themes, exploring what happens when childhood attachments persist in unhealthy ways into adulthood. While most stories featuring bears explore themes of nature, strength, or wisdom, Ted uses the bear as a comedic device to examine friendship, growing up, and the tension between nostalgia and maturity. It's a reminder that bears in human culture serve many purposes and can be shaped to fit countless narratives, from the sacred to the profane, from the wise to the ridiculous. Yogi Bear first appeared in 1958 as a character in the Huckleberry Hound show and quickly became popular enough to earn his own show. Set in the fictional Jellystone Park, a clear parody of Yellowstone National Park, Yogi Bear and his smaller companion Boo Boo spend their time devising schemes to steal picnic baskets from park visitors, all while evading Ranger Smith, who tries to maintain order. Yogi's character is defined by his belief that he's smarter than the average bear, a phrase he repeats often, usually while demonstrating various degrees of cleverness in his basket-stealing schemes. He often speaks in rhyme, adding to his distinctive personality. The cartoon ran for decades and became a cultural touchstone, introducing generations of children to the concept of bears as both wild animals and comic characters. While the show is light entertainment, it inadvertently touches on real issues of human-wildlife interaction. The problems that arise when wild animals become habituated to human food, and the challenges of managing parks where people and wildlife intersect. One of the most beloved bear characters in all of literature is Winnie the Pooh. But few people know that the character was inspired by a real bear. During World War I, a Canadian soldier named Harry Colburn bought a black bear cub and named her Winnipeg after his hometown. He brought Winnipeg, nicknamed Winnie, back to England when his unit deployed, and eventually donated her to the London Zoo where she lived for many years. A young boy named Christopher Robin Milne, son of author A. A. Milne, visited the zoo frequently and became enchanted with Winnie. He named his own teddy bear after her, A. A. Milne, inspired by his son's affection for both the real bear at the zoo and the stuffed bear at home. Began writing stories about Winnie the Pooh in 1926. The stories, illustrated by E.H. Shepard, became immediate classics, spawning countless books, adaptations, and merchandise. The gentle, honey-loving bear of the 100-Acre Wood has become one of the most recognizable characters in children's literature, all because a soldier befriended a black bear cub more than a century ago. In 1985, the Care Bears movie became a surprising box office success, earning more than $23 million. What made this unusual was that the film was based on a greeting card character that had already been developed into a successful toy line. Typically, movies are created first and toys follow as merchandise. But the Care Bears reverse this formula. The Care Bears themselves are colorful, teddy bear-like creatures, each with a special symbol on their belly representing their unique personality and power. They live in the clouds and help children with their problems, promoting messages of caring, friendship, and emotional well-being. While the Care Bears are fantastical rather than realistic bears, their success demonstrated the enduring appeal of bear characters in children's media. The franchise spawned multiple sequels, television series, and continues to produce new content and merchandise decades later. It's another example of how bears, in countless forms, continue to capture human imagination and affection. In southern France, the Chauvet Cave contains some of the oldest known cave art in the world, with paintings dating back approximately 32,000 years. Among the many animals depicted on the cave walls are bears, rendered with remarkable accuracy and artistic skill by prehistoric artists. These ancient people captured the essence of bears in ochre and charcoal, showing them in various poses, sometimes alone, sometimes among other animals. What makes these images even more poignant is that human remains and the remains of cave bears have been found in the same cave system. This suggests that both humans and bears used these caves, perhaps at different times, or perhaps with some level of coexistence or conflict. The fact that our ancestors chose to paint bears on the walls speaks to the significance these animals held in their world. Bears were competitors, potential threats, and sources of food and materials, but they were also clearly worthy of artistic representation, of being preserved in paint for millennia. Created in 1889 by Russian artists Ivan Shishkin and Konstantin Savitsky, Morning in a Pine Forest is one of the most famous paintings in Russian art. The large oil painting depicts a misty forest morning with 4 bear cubs playing on and around a massive fallen tree that is split lengthwise. The forest is rendered in meticulous detail, with towering pine trees disappearing into fog, creating an atmosphere of primeval wilderness. The bears themselves are portrayed with both accuracy and charm, capturing the playfulness of cubs while maintaining their wild nature. Shishkin painted the landscape while Savitsky painted the bears, though Savitsky's signature was later removed by their patron, leaving only Shishkin credited on the final work. The painting has become an icon of Russian art and has been reproduced countless times, appearing on everything from stamps to candy wrappers. It captures a moment of innocence and natural beauty, showing bears not as threats, but as creatures of grace and playfulness in their forest home among Inuit sculptors of the Arctic regions of North America. Dancing bears have become a popular and challenging subject. These sculptures typically depict a bear standing on one hind leg, the other leg lifted, arms positioned as if in mid-movement. Creating a sculpture that captures movement while maintaining physical balance and stability is technically demanding, requiring both artistic vision and engineering understanding. The dancing bear theme may draw from observations of actual bear behavior, as bears do occasionally stand and move in ways that appear dance-like, particularly during play or social interactions. It may also reflect the spiritual significance of bears in Inuit culture, where they're respected as powerful beings deserving of artistic tribute. These sculptures are typically carved from soapstone or other materials, and have become highly valued pieces of indigenous art, sought after by collectors around the world. Each dancing bear is unique, reflecting the individual artist's interpretation and skill. In the town of Dunbar, Scotland, stands a 5-meter-tall steel sculpture of a bear, created as a memorial to John Muir, one of the town's most famous native sons. Muir, born in Dunbar in 1838, emigrated to America as a young boy and grew up to become a naturalist, author, botanist, and zoologist. He's best known for his advocacy for wilderness preservation, his writings about the American West, and his instrumental role in the establishment of the national park system in the United States. The bear sculpture honors Muir's connection to American wilderness and his conservation legacy. Bears were among the animals Muir encountered and wrote about during his extensive travels through wild places. The sculpture serves as a physical reminder of Muir's belief that wild places and wild creatures have intrinsic value and deserve protection. It connects his Scottish birthplace to his American legacy, bridging to nations through the symbol of the bear, an animal that represents the wild places Muir devoted his life to understanding and preserving. In March 2021, contemporary artist Walter Risby sold an NFT artwork called Not Forgotten, But Gone for $1 million. The piece features the skeletal image of a golden miniature bear, rendered in a distinctive style that has become the artist's signature. Walter Risby is known for his Vandal Gummy series, which features gummy bears in various contexts, often making social commentary through these seemingly innocent childhood icons. The high price paid for this digital artwork reflects both the boom in NFT markets during that period and the continued cultural resonance of bear imagery. By depicting the skeleton of a golden bear, the piece perhaps comments on extinction, on the loss of childhood innocence, or on the way symbols persist even when the things they represent have disappeared. It's a contemporary example of how bears continue to serve as powerful symbols in art, their forms adapted to new mediums and new messages, but always carrying emotional and cultural weight. Viking warriors who wore bear skins into battle were known as berserkers, a word that literally means bear shirt in Old Norse. These warriors believed that by wearing the skin of a bear, they could invoke the bear's spirit and gain its legendary strength and ferocity in combat. Berserkers had a fearsome reputation, said to fight with wild, trance-like fury that made them nearly unstoppable. Whether this fury was purely psychological, induced by pre-battle rituals, or aided by substances that altered consciousness remains debated by historians. But the central role of the bear in this warrior tradition is clear. Bears represented ultimate strength and fearlessness, qualities any warrior would want to embody. The practice of wearing bear skins and taking on bear-like characteristics in battle shows how deeply bears were woven into Norse spirituality and identity. The bear was not just an animal, but a source of power that could be accessed through ritual and belief. In Inuit spirituality, Nanook is the master of bears, a powerful spiritual entity that decides whether hunters will be successful in their pursuit of polar bears. The Inuit traditionally hunted polar bears for food, fur, and materials, but they did so with great respect and ritual acknowledgement of the bear's spiritual significance. When a bear was killed, specific ceremonies were performed to honor its spirit. Male bears were given spirit weapons, tools they could use in the afterlife, while female bears received needle cases and sewing implements, reflecting gendered roles in both human and spiritual realms. These offerings were meant to ensure that the bear's spirit would not be offended and that, Nanook would continue to allow successful hunts. This practice reflects a worldview in which animals are not merely resources, but beings with spirits deserving of respect, and in which successful hunting depends as much on spiritual relationship as on physical skill. It's a profound example of how indigenous peoples developed complex belief systems around the animals they depended on for survival. The Kermode bear, a white or cream-colored variant of the black bear found in the coastal forests of British Columbia, holds a sacred place in the oral traditions and spiritual beliefs of the indigenous peoples of the region, particularly the Gitga'at and Katuzu, Sykesay's First Nations. According to their traditions, these white bears were created by Raven at the end of the last ice age as a reminder of the time when glaciers covered the land. Because of their spiritual significance, these white bears were not hunted even when black bears were taken for food and materials. This cultural protection, maintained for thousands of years, likely contributed to the survival of the white bear population. Today, the spirit bear has become a symbol of conservation in British Columbia, protected by law and by continued indigenous stewardship. It's a powerful example of how spiritual beliefs and cultural traditions can serve conservation purposes, protecting animals not through scientific understanding of biodiversity, but through reverence and cultural value that spans generations. In 1832, archaeologists excavating near Bern, Switzerland, discovered a collection of bronze figurines depicting various Gallo-Roman deities. Among them was Arcio, a goddess whose name derives from the Gaulish word artos, meaning bear. Arcio was portrayed seated beside a bear, sometimes offering the bear fruit or other food, suggesting a relationship of mutual respect or even partnership. The goddess appears to have been associated with the wilderness, with fertility and abundance, and particularly with bears themselves. The worship of Artio spread through Celtic and Gallo-Roman territories, and her image has been found in several locations across what is now Switzerland, France, and Germany. The connection between a goddess and bears speaks to the spiritual significance these animals held for ancient European peoples. Bears were seen not just as dangerous predators, but as sacred beings worthy of veneration, powerful enough to be associated with divinity. The name of the Swiss capital, Bern, may itself derive from bear, connecting the modern city to these ancient beliefs. In Korean mythology, the founding story of the nation involves a bear that became human. According to the legend, Hwanong, the son of the Lord of Heaven, descended to earth and ruled over the mortal realm. A bear and a tiger came to him, asking to be transformed into humans. Hwanong agreed to grant their wish if they could endure living in a cave for 100 days, eating only sacred mugwort and garlic. The tiger gave up, but the bear persevered through the entire period and was transformed into a beautiful woman. She later bore Hwanong's son, who was named Tongan. Tongan went on to establish the first Korean kingdom, Gojoshin, in 2333 BCE. Thus, according to this foundational myth, the Korean people traced their lineage partially to a bear who proved her worth through patience and endurance. A public holiday in Korea celebrates Tongan and the nation's formation. This myth elevates the bear to a position of extraordinary importance, making it literally ancestral to the Korean people, a sacred creature whose determination and strength are woven into national identity. Beyond the vocalizations we've discussed for specific species, bears as a family communicate through an intricate system of sounds that carry specific meanings. When content or relaxed, bears often make low, humming or mumbling sounds, almost like they're talking to themselves. These soft vocalizations seem to serve no immediate purpose except perhaps to express comfort or satisfaction. Much like a cat's purr, when stressed or anxious, bears huff and blow air forcefully through their nostrils, creating a sharp, explosive sound that can be heard from considerable distances. Tooth clacking or jaw popping, where bears rapidly snap their jaws together, serves as a warning signal telling other bears or potential threats to back off. Cubs have their own vocabulary, producing plaintive cries when separated from their mothers, and making contented nursing sounds when feeding. By learning to interpret these various sounds, researchers can better understand bear emotional states and behaviors without having to rely solely on visual observation. Bear paws are remarkable structures, engineered by evolution for multiple purposes. Each paw has 5 toes, each tipped with a non-retractable claw. The pads on the bottom of the paw are thick and tough, providing protection from rough terrain, sharp objects, and extreme temperatures. The arrangement of the pads allows for excellent grip and traction on various surfaces. What's particularly interesting is that bears are meaning they walk on the entire sole of their foot, much as humans do, rather than on their toes like dogs or cats. This plantigrade posture gives bears stability and allows them to stand upright more easily than digitigrade animals can. The size of the paw varies enormously by species, from the massive paws of polar bears to the smaller, more delicate paws of sun bears. But regardless of size, all bear paws share the same basic structure, a testament to the fundamental design that has served the bear family well for millions of years. A bear's extraordinary sense of smell doesn't just tell them what's nearby. It can also tell them when things happened. Bears can detect and interpret scent marks left by other bears and determine approximately how long ago those marks were made. Fresh scent marks smell different from old ones as the volatile compounds break down and change over time. This ability to detect temporal information through scent is crucial for territorial animals like bears. A bear moving through its territory can assess whether other bears have been in the area recently or if the scent trails are old and the intruder long gone. This helps bears avoid unnecessary confrontations while still maintaining awareness of their social environment. Similarly, bears can smell food sources and determine freshness, helping them decide whether it's worth investigating further or if the food has spoiled. Their nose is essentially a time machine, allowing them to perceive not just the present but also layers of the recent past, all encoded in molecules floating through the air. Asterisk the journey from helpless newborn to independent bear is long and complex. When cubs are born during hibernation, they weigh less than a pound and are entirely dependent on their mother. Their eyes don't open for several weeks, and they spend this early period nursing and sleeping, growing rapidly on their mother's rich milk. By the time the family emerges from the den in spring, the cubs have grown considerably but are still small and vulnerable. Over the following months, cubs learn through constant observation and practice. They watch their mother forage and begin trying foods themselves, gradually transitioning from a milk diet to solid food. They learn to recognize danger and to respond appropriately, whether that means climbing a tree to escape or staying still and quiet. They practice hunting and foraging techniques through play with their siblings, pouncing on each other, wrestling, and engaging in mock battles that build strength and coordination. By the end of their first year, cubs have typically gained 40 to 60 pounds. They'll stay with their mother through a second winter, and by the time they're finally on their own, they carry with them 2 years of intensive education in how to be a bear, The dental formula and jaw structure of bears reflects their omnivorous diet. Bears typically have 42 teeth, including incisors for nipping and cutting, canines for gripping and defense, and molars and premolars for grinding. Unlike pure carnivores whose teeth are all sharp and pointed for shearing meat, bear molars are relatively flat with rounded cusps, suitable for grinding plant material. Their canine teeth are still substantial, long and sharp enough to inflict serious damage when needed for defense or for the occasional predation. But the overall structure of bear dentition is a compromise between carnivorous and herbivorous needs, allowing them to process both meat and plants effectively. The jaw itself is powerfully muscled, capable of delivering significant bite force. Brown bears and polar bears, the largest species, can exert bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch. This powerful bite allows them to crack bones, crush shells, and tear through tough plant materials. Yet the same jaws can be remarkably gentle when carrying cubs or manipulating delicate foods. While we often refer to bears sleeping through winter, hibernation is physiologically quite different from sleep. During normal sleep, body temperature remains relatively stable and the sleeper can be easily awakened. During hibernation, a bear's body temperature drops by several degrees. Their heart rate slows dramatically, and their metabolic rate decreases to a fraction of its normal level. Yet they maintain enough physiological activity to avoid the tissue damage that would occur if their body temperature dropped too low. Hibernating bears don't actually sleep continuously. They experience periods of torpor where they're deeply dormant, but they also have periods of lighter dormancy where their body temperature rises slightly, and they may shift positions or briefly rouse. If disturbed, a hibernating bear can wake up and become active, though this is dangerous for the bear as it burns precious energy reserves. Interestingly, bears don't urinate or defecate during hibernation. Their kidneys shut down normal function and their bodies recycle metabolic waste. When they emerge in spring, one of their first acts is often to purge accumulated waste. The biology of bear hibernation continues to fascinate researchers, particularly those interested in how the principles might someday be applied to human medicine or space travel. A bear's cardiovascular system is a remarkable piece of biological engineering. During normal activity, a large brown bear's heart might beat 70 to 80 times per minute, pumping blood through a body that can weigh 800 pounds or more. The heart itself is proportionally large, capable of handling the demands of sudden, intense activity like chasing prey or running from threats. But during hibernation, this same heart slows to as few as 8 beats per minute, sometimes even fewer. Yet it continues to efficiently circulate blood, maintaining organ function at the reduced metabolic rate. This ability to modulate heart rate so dramatically without damaging the heart muscle is extraordinary. In humans, such extreme bradycardia would typically indicate serious medical problems. Yet bears do it naturally for months at a time and emerge healthy. Medical researchers study bear cardiac function to better understand how to protect human hearts during surgery or other medical interventions that require slowing or stopping the heart temporarily. One of the great mysteries of bear hibernation is how they maintain bone density and muscle mass despite months of inactivity. In humans and most other mammals, prolonged bed rest leads to significant bone loss and muscle atrophy. Astronauts in microgravity experience rapid bone density loss, and elderly patients who are bedridden can lose substantial skeletal strength in just weeks. Yet bears emerge from months of hibernation with their bones and muscles intact. if somewhat weakened by temporary disuse. Researchers have discovered that bears have special mechanisms for recycling calcium and other minerals, preventing the bone loss that would normally occur. Similarly, they break down and rebuild muscle proteins in ways that maintain muscle mass better than would be expected. Understanding these mechanisms could have enormous implications for treating osteoporosis, for helping bedridden patients maintain strength, or for enabling long-duration spaceflight. The hibernating bear, motionless in its den, may hold keys to some of medicine's most challenging problems. While bears are primarily solitary, they're not entirely antisocial. They maintain awareness of other bears in their area through scent marking and occasional direct encounters. Adult males and females have largely separate territories, with male ranges typically much larger and overlapping the territories of several females. During breeding season, these patterns shift as males actively seek out females. Some populations of bears, particularly where food sources are concentrated, develop social hierarchies. At salmon streams, for example, larger, more dominant bears get access to the best fishing spots, while younger or smaller bears must wait their turn or fish in less productive areas. These hierarchies are maintained through displays and occasional aggressive encounters, but often simply through recognition. Bears seem to remember each other and their relative status, avoiding unnecessary conflicts through mutual understanding of social structure. Even solitary animals, it seems, maintain complex social awareness that shapes their behavior and movements throughout their lives. Bears are what ecologists call ecosystem engineers, species whose activities physically modify their environment in ways that affect other species. When bears dig for roots and tubers, they aerate and turn over soil, creating conditions favorable for seed germination. When they defecate after eating berries, they disperse seeds across wide areas, effectively planting new shrubs and trees. Salmon-eating bears in coastal regions transport marine nutrients from the ocean into terrestrial ecosystems. The partially eaten salmon carcasses they leave behind decompose and enrich the soil, fertilizing the forest and ultimately making those forests more productive. Studies have shown that trees growing near salmon streams, where bears regularly bring their catches, grow significantly larger than trees farther from these nutrient subsidies. Bears fishing for salmon are inadvertently farming the forest, connecting aquatic and terrestrial food webs in ways that benefit countless species. Through their daily activities, bears shape the landscapes they inhabit, influencing everything from soil chemistry to plant distribution to the abundance of other animals. All 8 bear species face conservation challenges of varying severity. Habitat loss remains the primary threat, as human development fragments and destroys the forests, tundra, and mountains that bears depend on. Climate change is a particularly severe threat to polar bears, whose sea ice habitat is shrinking, and to pandas, whose bamboo forests are sensitive to temperature and precipitation changes. Poaching and illegal wildlife trade continue to threaten several species, particularly Asian bears killed for traditional medicine markets. Yet there are reasons for hope. Conservation efforts have brought some species back from the brink. Panda populations are slowly increasing thanks to intensive protection and breeding programs. Tiger and leopard conservation, which protects forest habitats, also benefits Asian black bears and sloth bears that share those ecosystems. In North America, black bear populations are stable or increasing in many areas, demonstrating that coexistence is possible when habitat is protected and human-bear conflicts are properly managed. The future of bears depends on human choices. on whether we're willing to share the landscape, to protect wild spaces, and to value these magnificent animals for their own sake, not just for what they provide to us. In the end, our long relationship with bears reflects something fundamental about human nature. We've feared bears, hunted them, worshipped them, told stories about them, and gradually come to understand our responsibility toward them. Bears appear in the oldest art we've created and in our most modern digital media. They're woven through our mythologies, our spiritual traditions, our science, and our popular culture. Perhaps we're drawn to bears because they're similar enough to humans to seem familiar, yet wild enough to represent everything we've lost in our domesticated lives. They stand upright as we do. They're omnivorous as we are. They show intelligence and problem-solving abilities we recognize. Yet they remain utterly themselves, shaped by millions of years of evolution to survive in ways we cannot, possessing strength and senses we can barely imagine. To protect bears is to protect wildness itself, to preserve spaces where power and grace still roam freely. In learning to coexist with bears, we learn to coexist with nature, and in understanding them, we perhaps understand ourselves a little better, recognizing that we too are animals, sharing this planet with countless other species, all of us connected in the great web of life that sustains us all. And so our journey through the world of bears comes to a gentle close. We've wandered from the Arctic ice where polar bears hunt to the tropical forests where sun bears climb, from the mountains where spectacled bears hide to the salmon streams where brown bears feast. We've explored their bodies, their minds, their social lives, and their relationships with humans across millennia. We've seen them in folklore and film, in ancient caves and modern art, in spiritual traditions and scientific studies. 101 facts, 101 small windows into the lives of these remarkable creatures. Each fact is a thread, and together they weave a picture of the bear family in all its diversity and resilience. These animals have survived ice ages and climate shifts, predators and prey, forests rising and falling across millions of years. They've walked alongside humanity since our species first emerged, appearing in our earliest art and our most recent stories. The bears still live among us, in wild places that grow fewer each year but persist nonetheless. Their survival depends on choices we make, on whether we protect habitat, reduce conflicts, and recognize that the world belongs to them as much as to us. Every bear that walks the earth is a miracle of biology, a testament to evolution's creative power, a living connection to the ancient past and a bridge to whatever future we create. As you drift towards sleep now, perhaps you can imagine a forest at dawn, mist rising between the trees. Somewhere in that forest, a bear is waking, stretching, beginning its day. The world continues its ancient rhythms, bears living as they always have, finding food, raising cubs, surviving through intelligence and strength. And that's a comforting thought, isn't it? That somewhere the wild still exists, and in it, bears still roam free. If you've found peace in this slow exploration, if these facts have carried you gently toward rest, consider subscribing to AFK Asleep for more calming journeys into the natural world. But for now, let your breathing slow, let your muscles relax, let your mind drift like mist through a quiet forest where bears walk softly and the world is as it should be. Rest well. The bears are out there, living their lives, and all is well with the world. Good night.